everybody. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining this apparent madman on this journey of understanding. I am liking to discuss the idea of changes in the earth, and it's been brought to my attention over the decades from a permacultural and agricultural background in regards to weather and how the weather systems have changed over the course of the 30 to 40 years that I've been paying close attention to it. And I've been an advocate of communicating that while we can pass the blame in any number of ways in a modern age of weather manipulation, we're best to understand that in terms of the capacity to grow food, which has been probably my longest background, that we're not going to be able to manipulate it back, especially as individuals. And so the awareness of how we adjust our abilities and the things that we consider to create forecasts is probably the most paramount aspect of how we can engage our capacity to be sustainable in the future. So there's a deep rabbit hole that you can go down in regards to it, but cycles change, and we see them on small scales like La Nina and El Nino, and we see them in the ice caps and the ice cores, and we look at the value that it might be in relation to the thawing of certain regions. We look at the circumstances of our human impact, from the 80s with CFC, fluorocarbons, to obviously CO2, methane, where the methane comes from, where the CO2 comes from. Population, industry has been one aspect where the blame has been put on to us as individuals, and I think we can absorb a little bit of that. Denial is probably not the best circumstance to hold on to. But over the years, I've come to understand and broadcast from a background in radio, solar cycles and the circumstances of solar cycles on our Earth. Geomagnetic, atmospheric impacts, obviously melting of Arctic regions where once white reflection has turned to black absorption, increased temperatures, therefore runoff, therefore cooling of oceans and desalinization of oceans, therefore creating different current vectors, flows of our oceanic cycles. And it goes on, broader than we can adapt to perhaps, but nevertheless worth adapting to. One thing that has led to my awareness of solar cycles has been the impacts of tectonic and volcanic activity and the uptick of those and the increased extremities of those that has been prominent for at least the last 14 to 15 years that I've been witnessing it, not firsthand, because here in Australia we are very isolated in relation to it. But my awareness is not local or caring to be local on any scale of imagination or investigation. My scale is broader, more global, and so my my wonder was that how is it going to affect our circumstances living on this planet, and why are so many ancient civilizations traced to having gone to live underground, and for instance, Native Americans' ancestry having stated that they came from underground, and what would have actually required them to have gone underground. Now we've got mud floods, we've got Pompeii, we've got Atlantis. There are many versions in relation to history. There are many stories throughout history that is good to understand, read, find parallels, look at timelines, recognize the ages in which our planetary cycles have cycled through, the lengths of these ages, the cycles of stories from ancient civilizations and how they might link up with these ages and circumstances that derive underground lifestyles and survival techniques in those transitional times. No small discussion, so I'll try and keep it brief. As unscripted as it is, which you'll find from me forever, that it's the Gemini, the winter solstice here in the southern hemisphere, of which my birth defines me. It is just flow. And moments ago, as my awareness is drawn to the broader natural environmental wonders that I tend to be in alignment with astrologically, volcanically, tectonically, the numbers of alerts that one would get during a day in relation to the activity that occurs on a global scale. I just had 11 volcano alerts all occur within 1 minute of each other around the globe. Now there are 50 odd active volcanoes at the moment. There are some rather radical earthquakes occurring in the regions of supervolcanoes such as Taupo, Mauna, Yellowstone. These areas are of concern and areas that you won't hear mainstream medias or niche-orientated influencers discuss in relation to the forecast of what might happen in the future. Which is an interesting reality in relation to how I've been discussing the convergence of the demise of various and many sides of our reliance of society financial, social, geographical, agricultural, and how they have become rather challenged all at the same time, and allowed to be challenged all at the same time by those that might be pulling the strings, the puppet masters, the ruling elites, not the governments, because no politician is in control, just if you didn't already know. But the biblical philosophies that might ring true in an age like today. So as we move into the Aquarian age, and it's a move into, it's not like a threshold in which we just transition. There are shifts in regards to it. The uptick in volcanic activity and specifically as well, tectonic activity is quite interesting in relation to the amounts of methane and obviously sulfuric air quality that has plagued this planet, increased the unprecedented nature of weather that seems to continue to be spoken about by various bureaus of meteorology on a global scale, however, forecasted in advance and in the channels that I run and have run. Perhaps another reason why I live in a bus, and we can discuss that in further topics. But when like a dozen or so volcanic alerts come through within a moment, when I mean a moment, a minute, and I might even use it as a thumbnail for this particular video in regards to the screenshot that one might try and achieve in the process of not trying to do too much polishing and video editing for the process of your enjoyment, but simply the definition of the subject matter and the truth and facts that might be able to be shared in the process of helping you find a level of awareness that is worthwhile in the understanding of way of the world in the future. And while we actually appreciate existing in the present and not getting lost in the past, it can be good to recognize the historical views, the perhaps fallacy of modern history and the reasons behind it regarding Tartarian and ancient texts from the civilizations lived throughout the ages, of which we might recognize that the timing is aligned for this period of life where we may see and our offspring may be forced to endure, and how we can engage in the breadth of understanding that is beneficial for future generations to learn from in the experience of our awareness in today's age. So a brief and valuable opportunity to understand beyond the comfort zones of status quo and financial stability, that we can gather a deeper awareness of the concepts that might make our lives different to the way we would have chosen them to be. And that is generally the status quo of recent years for all those woke in society since things like the coronavirus, cerveza sickness, and concepts that have challenged our world, whether it be a fallacy or whether it be a future prophecy, will be up to us to adapt. And adaptation is the evolution of humanity. So for those that follow this channel, I thank you for your open-mindedness in the process of experiencing the world as a vehicle to exist in, rather than one that we take for granted. We give thanks for every day in the experience of our choices and the awareness of our understandings that become a natural wonder, like the consequences of nature itself. Respect, bless.